Are you at all interested in standard weights and measures? Because boy, do I have a scientist rabbit hole that maybe you need to go down. This comment was left on my personal account where I was reading from a book of the 1800s where we were trying to teach people the metric system and how old it is and how the meter came to be because we measured the earth and then broke it down into a bunch of little parts. And we got one that was manageable and we called that a meter. Scribed it out. Now that is what a meter is. We did the same thing with the weight system by using water, taking 1 centimeter, weighing it at the highest density that it would be, and then calling that a gram. And we did it all so we have a standard of measurement, right? We use a physical thing called the earth because presumably the earth will always be the same size and water will always basically be the same thing. It's the most plentiful substance on earth. And so if most of the humans were wiped off the face of the planet and we had all of our books destroyed, if we had to build our entire body of knowledge back up from nothing, and we got to a point kind of like where we are today, most of the scientific theories that we have would still hold firm because that's what science is trying to find truth through a testable, falsifiable, replicatable process. Whereas stuff like mythology and folklore and legends and culture and language, that's all going to be different. But if all of the rules of the natural world still apply, physics, we should pretty much get really similar answers. And that's kind of like the basis for the metric system. We want to always be able to find out what a meter is, even if that platinum meter is destroyed. We always want to be able to find out how much a gram weighs, even if the original gram made out of titanium is destroyed. Another standard that we have is temperature. And temperature, as we know it for the Celsius and centigrade, which are interchangeable, was made by a man named Celsius when he proposed that water boils at 0 degrees and freezes at 100 degrees, which is a little bit screwy. I don't know why he came up with that. Even like knowing it intuitively, it doesn't make sense. Anyway, someone did flip-flop it around later on down the road saying it should be 100 degrees for boiling, 0 degrees for freezing. And there was a consensus among the scientific community that this centigrade measure, which is what Celsius called his, 0-100 scale, this new measure that we're using based on a set of 100 should be called Celsius after the original gentleman who came up with the idea of splitting it into 100. And you want to know the scientist who proposed that they name it Celsius after him? Would you like to know? It was Carl Linnaeus, and he's the one responsible for binomial nomenclature that we use to label every living organism on the planet. I mentioned him when I did my insect video. It's the reason that we have like Homo sapiens for humans instead of just humans. So there is no miscommunications, and people all over the world in all different countries use binomial nomenclature when they're talking. So not only did Linnaeus name like butterflies and stuff, he actually named the Celsius system after Celsius, who was a Swedish astronomer who also, like, his passions involved measuring the earth, although I don't think he had anything to do with the measuring, coming up with the metric system. They were doing that over in France. This guy was somehow measuring latitude lines between the fat part of Earth and the skinny part of Earth up there and seeing if there was a difference in what he got versus what these other people were doing. And that's all science is. It's very infrequently that you see one person who does like a whole big lot. There's always one person who has taken all of the work from a whole bunch of other people and finally come up with a thing. Like that's what Darwin did. That's why we know who Darwin is because he stood on the shoulders of giants to come up with the theory of evolution. And Celsius was no different. He came up with something on his own, so we know who his name is, but he also contributed to science in all these little different ways that no one will ever know about. The Aurora Borealis. He's the first, I think he was the first like documented person who determined that the Aurora Borealis had something to do with the magnetic fields of the Earth because of the deviation of the needle on a compass during the lights, the magnetic storms. But you don't hear about Celsius when you hear about the Aurora Borealis. Make no mistake, the stuff this guy did contributed to the entire body of understanding the natural world. And his measurements between the poles, or whatever he was doing, of the Earth contributed to, I don't think it was Newton, whoever it was who discovered that the Earth is oblong, like egg-shaped, instead of being a perfect sphere. That theory was built upon what Celsius did. If you're at all interested in the scientific gibberish that I'm spewing out, I have lots of reading materials and lots of suggestions if you want to read about niche scientists or, just like cool little reading like that. Okay, that's my nerd out for the night.